Welcome. Welcome to the Summit Sustainability Summit, brought to you by OneClick LCA. This is a two-day free online event for architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, and sustainability professionals across the construction value chain. And we're delighted to have you here to get inspired, get engaged, and get sustainable. My name is Melina Zacharia, and I will be your host today. And now let's start today's show. I'm very excited to be joined by our guest. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Andrew Mitchell. Andrew is the Operations Director Sustainability at Mace. He leads a team of 45 people delivering sustainability and social value support into Mace's Construct division. Mace is a global expert in shaping the built environment, helping to lead the way to a more connected, resilient, and sustainable world. Lovely to have you with us today, Andrew. Is there anything you would like to add about your role at Mace?
No, that's fine. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone.
Next up, we have Sustainable Futures Partner at HTA Design, Rory Bergin. Rory's role is to develop excellence in sustainable and innovative design and construction, enabling HTA, a practice of over 200 architects and sustainability specialists, to lead the field in sustainable placemaking. It's great to have you with us, Rory. Is there anything you would like to add about your role?
No, I expect that this is a constantly changing field, so it's good to be able to connect with other professionals in this way to keep our knowledge up to date. Looking forward to the discussion.
Next, joining our panel, we have Joanna Dravinen. Joanna is a one-click LCA embodied carbon expert. Is an LCA specialist with extensive knowledge in sustainability issues within the built environment. It's great to have you with us, Joanna. Is there anything you wish to add?
No, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all here.
Finally, we're joined today by Matt Paskin, the Solutions and Marketing Director at Whitecroft Lighting. Matt brings 22 years of lighting experience to his role in Whitecroft Lighting, one of the UK's largest public and private sector lighting providers, working with education, healthcare, and workspace projects. Thank you for joining us today, Matt. Is there anything you would like to share about your role?
That's all good, thank you. Just good afternoon. Looking forward to it.
Glad to have you all with us today. Today, we're going to discuss the critical role of product carbon data to inform better buildings. This session will offer valuable insights for manufacturers, sustainability specialists, designers, product specialists, and any other stakeholders that are involved in the design and construction of sustainable buildings. But first, a few things about the event. The Summer Sustainability Summit is brought to you by OneClick LCA, the global LCA software empowering the industry to decarbonize and get sustainable. With it, you can comply with more than 80 national regulations, standards, and certifications. Access the world's largest construction LCA database with more than 250,000 LCA datasets, and bring LCA into your existing workflow with more than 20 BIM and other integrations to make your sustainability calculations faster and easier. For over 20 years, OneClick LCA has been making the construction value chain more sustainable. You may learn more about us at oneclicklca.com. So now, please let's go ahead and dive into the topics that we'll be covering today. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments, and we will try to tackle as many as we can at the end of our discussion. I will now provide the first question to kickstart our discussion, and I'm actually really excited to get started and see where this talk will take us. First question: how can accurate product carbon data enhance decision-making in sustainable building, design, and construction? Rory, I will pass this over to you, and then we can all engage in a free discussion.
Well, I think that it's very important for us in the construction sector to know what impacts we're having, and the earlier we know this information, the better it is. So we try and look at this information from an early stage of project design, because that's the big decisions are made at the early stages. So it's super important. Many of our projects in the London area are subject to not quite regulation in this area, but we have reporting data to provide to the local authority here in London, the Greater London Authority. So it's part of every major project process. So it could not be more important.
Thank you, Rory. Anything to add here? Andrew?
Yeah, so as a contractor, we are seeing our clients request us to achieve certain standards of embodied carbon. So teams like Rory's, etc., are working sometimes client side. So they are generating predictions of what the embodied carbon strategy and targets will be. And we're signing up to those targets, and sometimes that's contractually. So obviously we're then looking for the quality of data to match those and just to make sure it's accurate as wherever we can. We've had big successes in terms of the relatively easier sectors of the build. So structures, we're really strong at understanding what the true carbon is around steel, concrete, etc. It's just that granularity that we're struggling with around the MEP piece as well. So, which is advancing, but yeah, quality of data is key to us satisfying our clients and just make sure we're contractually safe in that sort of respect.
Thank you, Andrew. Anything you would like to add, Matt or Joanna?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for us, we come slightly further down the chain, and that sort of quality of data that the guys are talking about there. We've noticed, in our world, in the MEP sort of lighting environment, there's varying levels of data we can give you. So, sometimes we get asked for a TM65 evaluation of the carbon rather than an EPD. But when we model the two out, what we're starting to find is a 40% reduction. Certainly when you get into the sort of the granular level of the EPD, which when you start to talk to people specifically in our area around schools, has a really interesting knock-on effect about the offsetting costs or the amount of solar or PV or something else that people are working into a project. So yeah, really important.
Really interesting. Anything to add here, Joanna? You know more about EPDs than any of us.
I think from contractor's point of view, I guess also the design, like a client point of view, I think like product carbon documents, EPDs or others can play quite a big part of setting a goal, sustainability goals early. So, I mean, they're good that they exist. Otherwise, it's based on a lot of guesswork. And like Andrew said, that if you have to contractually sign up for them, then the risk is quite high if it's not actual manufactured data, for example. And the project sustainable objectives are obviously outlined quite early, so the EPDs can support and drive in the discussion in the identify how to meet the targets and are they actually like achievable, or they just someone come up with some nice numbers and they have to be met. So they can come quite key for the contractors to select which products they actually select for their project going forward.
Thank you. Yes, I believe that is really important for everyone to understand the importance of carbon data and have an accurate carbon data. That was a really great start to our discussion. Really, thank you. Moving on to the next question. What challenges do companies face when integrating carbon data into their product development processes, and how they can overcome these obstacles? Rory, would you like to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a challenge because the construction sector operates the way it has always operated. So, there are historical processes and historical behaviors and historical contract mechanisms. So introducing something that's quite new and different, which is, the evaluation of the carbon impact of materials and processes, a lot of people aren't quite sure how to deal with it. How to deal with it contractually, how to deal with it in terms of risk. At what point do they do a very detailed assessment? How to communicate that assessment methodology? Whether it's part of the carbon of the entire project or whether it's dealt with as a separate issue. And then the difficulty of integrating information into the tools that we use, so depending on the tools that you're using for design or evaluation, quite a lot of tools are still out there that don't really have access to embodied carbon data yet. So it's making sure that we've access to the data routinely during the design process and are able to feed that into the architecture and the engineering of the project. And then we also have the problem where different disciplines are sometimes using different tools and looking at things in a slightly different way. So then, when you bring the information together, making sure you're not double counting, or equally that something isn't being missed. So yeah, there are still quite a few challenges. I mean, we've made huge progress in the last few years, but I think there are still some significant challenges.
Thank you, Rory. Anything you would like to add, Andrew, from the perspective of Mace and your experience?
Yeah, so it is crucial, the carbon story, for us winning projects, us winning contracts. Our clients, want to talk about embodied carbon, but as Rory sort of indicated, the industry hasn't flexed in the way it operates. So we come on board, REBA 3-4 stages, and a lot of the big decisions have been made, and we've got, we have solutions to improve the carbon story, etc. So the way the industry operates doesn't give us enough time and enough opportunity to add that carbon value. And then the added challenge around the education in the broader, down into the supply chain. Sometimes you'll talk about EPDs, etc., into that supply chain, and they don't, they're not familiar with all this process. It's such a fastly moving space that that education piece isn't there. We started internally with Mace talking about circularity and how we can improve that carbon story there. So, we're rapidly moving into new realms of elements that we need to deliver. We're conscious of that, and our clients are pushing us. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done. Thank
you, Andrew. Matt?
Yeah, I guess again from a manufacturing perspective, a couple of things going on. So, as in particular Andrew's alluded to there, we get approached and asked for an EPD. So at one level, we're trying to create accurate data to give to the construction industry to use and work with. But then often when you challenge them and say, well, what are you going to do with this data? How are you going to use it? You mentioned the word circularity. We've been off trying to develop products that are circular in their very existence, right, in the last 30, 40 years. How does that work when you interpret in the model is a challenge for us. So yeah, what you do with the data is a challenge. But then on the dichotomy, the other side of it, interestingly, what we started to realize very quickly was we get a richness of data back ourselves, right? So all of a sudden we know loads about our products and where all the carbon is. And when we start targeting, if you look particularly at a light fitting, the e-waste is the hotspot in the embedded carbon after the in-use carbon. But again, what you then need is skill sets in your business. So the right people and teams around you that can look at the data, interpret the hotspots, and then work out what to go after when. So, we're setting those sort of near, mid, and long-term horizons. What's achievable today? What's not achievable, but what could be done, in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's really useful. Thank you. Education, I think, is one of the main important issues in accelerating low-carbon products. What do you think, Joanna?
Not what we have noticed. Obviously, there's a lot of intent. I mean, from actual product manufacturers to improve their products and obviously calculate the embodied carbon or whole life carbon of their products, which I think quite a lot of people like to know. Obviously, difficult to get information from their supply chain seems to pop up like nearly every time. So to actually know where every single part comes from, and they might change, and some people obviously buy them through wholesalers, so they don't even know necessarily where they come from. So that seems to be one kind of obstacle. Obviously, there is generic data to cover it, but it's not then that accurate. That if you actually get it from your supply chain in that sense, so that's one thing we've noticed. And obviously, some people have a lot of products. Some might have two, but like lighting or MEP industry has, I don't know, 100,000 products. So you can't do these kind of things manually. So there need to be some like a quite heavy automation in place before you could cover whole product ranges, which is something that One Click LC is obviously trying to help on the scalability of many of these with EPD generators and such.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you all. Let's move on to our next question now. How important is the comparison of carbon data at an early stage in informing better decisions? Now, would you like to start, Andrew?
Yeah, so yeah, as I've already alluded to, we spend quite a lot of effort at the bid stage. Data quality on the actual proposed scheme is probably quite low. So we're doing estimates and stuff like that. So as time has gone on, we've got really good at benchmarking internally. So that's obviously a crucial element of that process. So yeah, the carbon data story is embedded throughout our process now. We're starting to get into a position where we're monitoring as built performance, etc. But and I think we'll allude to a little bit later in a couple of the other questions. But the overarching challenge is, there's no regulations, especially in the UK, around embodied carbon. As such, the methodologies, there's no embedment within building regulations. So it is a little bit of a wild west. It's a case of the client's done one calculation and we've done another. So we're always under that particular challenge. We're quite interested and quite excited about the UK net zero building standards, which should come out towards the end of the summer. At least that would give us all a similar hymn sheet to work against. So we'll all be working sort of the same kind of agenda. So yeah, no, it's a challenge, but as I keep repeating, we win work on being able to have a aggressive carbon strategy. So it's not something we're shying away from.
Thank you very much. Joanna, do you agree for the need with standardization and the importance of comparison at an early stage?
I mean, it's important to know and do your own comparison. I'm not a huge fan of any benchmark because then people just try to get to a number, and that leads to a lot of questionable ways of getting it. So if you can just do better than you did last time, I think it's kind of important, and like every time try to improve. So obviously early stage, it can't be absolutely accurate of any of them, but if you have a good data, I mean, you can, and up-to-date data, you can always probably do a ballpark figure. So if your design is completely going the wrong way, you can see it early stages as well, or if you have different options, I mean, you can quite quickly see if you should build from, I don't know, steel or concrete, certain things, or if there's a new product that you could replace with something that was last time really heavy on concrete, or concrete carbon. You can see that early stages, because it is the bigger picture. I mean, the structures will be the main leading things, and then the MEP maybe after that. Nowadays, especially if it's an office building, maybe not in some school also. So obviously there is different tools to measure them. I mean, we have early stage tool, or just our newly launched material compass. You can just go browse materials and see what you can find today.
Thank you, Joanna. Anything to add here, Matt, from the perspective of manufacturers in a lighting environment?
Yeah, I think Johanna picked up on a really good point earlier about supply chain and just that general intimacy that you've got to build. For us now, we're not making decisions about the building. We can support Rory and the guys on the call in terms of helping them win their work and plan in that way. But for us, right further down the supply chain, we've got to get really close and understand. It's almost like the supply chain team and the purchasing guys are now so embedded in our development process that we're making decisions about material selection before we've even started thinking about what the concept or the form of the product's going to look like. And even today we're having great conversations. We started to discount aluminiums, extruded aluminiums, because we were worried about the impact and the carbon, the way we profiled it. But then as you start to understand more and your supply chain gets better at reacting to your wants and needs, you realize that actually there's some quite low carbon forms of, certainly with energy, hydro energy and stuff like that you can get at. So really early engagement with the supply chain early on has really helped us really impact what we do later down the stream.
Thank you very much. Anything to add here, Rory?
Yeah, I think that we find ourselves in the interesting position of looking at this kind of information before we've finished the building or even at feasibility stage. So you're making comparisons between different basic options for the building. Should it be this tall, or should it be this long, or this wide, or whatever? And all of those decisions have an impact on the emissions, almost irrespective of what material you build it from. So getting the building form factor, designing an efficient building in the first case is important, and being able to produce information and numbers that informs the client and planners and other stakeholders why you've made a decision is really helpful. So we can use embodied carbon information to push the design team in the right way. And more and more, of course, we're looking at refurbishment rather than new designs. So being able to point out, in numerical terms, what difference it makes to a project if you refurbish an existing building compared to demolition and replacement. So for me, this is the most crucial stage, because it's where you make the big savings or where you don't. And I think still, the profession is still some way away from using tools adequately at the very early stage to inform themselves about different design decisions. So it's really great to see people like Autodesk take on this and build it into forma. And I know you guys are working with them on that, so that you can do feasibility study designs, and you can have an educated estimate about what the impact might be, and then you can make comparisons between different strategies. So we're getting there, I think, but the profession as a whole, I think, still has some way to go.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much. I think we all agree that no one can stress enough the importance of having this data at a very early stage. And now, if we can move on to the next question. Would you then all be able to provide some examples maybe of successful projects where product carbon data significantly improved the sustainability outcomes? Why don't we start with you, Matt?
Yeah, sorry, I got a little bit of background noise, so I'll just turn myself off for a second there. Yeah, I guess for us, slightly different where we're at in terms of the project, but I talked about granular data and where you can get to, and when you break down, one click have really helped us understand the impact, especially in an embodied sense of our luminaires. And when you look at a luminaire, a light fitting, most of the embodied carbon is in the e-waste, right? And then when you break that down, going after the drivers and the electronics is slightly further down the supply chain, so a little bit harder to do. But then when you look at the other hotspots, and this was that sort of skill set I was talking about in terms of being able to get into this, there's a level where you get to with LED boards. So at the moment we've got a material FR4 that was all our LEDs were mounted onto, and we were managed to, via the supply chain, move that not only from Eastern European supply chains into Europe, but into a reusable and a recyclable aluminium. So again, we were able to cut, in terms of the benchmark we've got for our SBTI data, we were able to take 70% out of that global warming potential, just because of the granularity of the data we've got. So just one example of one saving embodied carbon, actually improving the sort of the stability and the strength of the supply chain, but also actually bringing some cost savings in as well in terms of that supply chain. Real big win for us in terms of what you can do. So for me, it's quite a small scale level, right? We're talking about a small part of a luminaire in the M&E sort of area of the bigger picture, but really interesting for us.
Thank you, Matt. That's really, really interesting. Would you care to add something here, Andrew? Maybe you can give us some examples?
Yeah, no, I can. So one of our, as I've already alluded to already, one of our success stories is around structures, substructure and superstructure. We're also signatories to a body called Steel Zero, which is an industry-wide, not just construction, but Volvo, etc., members of this organisation. It's a collective of consumers of steel who are trying to flex the low carbon supply chain from the wider steel industry. And with our fabricators, we've been able to do the educational piece with them. They're involved in the Steel Zero piece. They understand the challenges we've got, and we're seeing results. So in effect, what we're able to do is we were able to give a carbon target for a steel structure of one of our projects, one of our buildings. They go away and look at the supply chain, look at solutions around taking volume out, etc. But it's all really driven on the back of data quality, really, because the steel industry has the EPDs, has the knowledge, it gives us some aggressive carbon numbers. And from there, we were able to take the client demand, push it into that particular element, the structure of the building, and they've been able to match it, or in some case better it. So it's a really strong sort of story, and also we're giving the opportunity for the steel industry to move to new technologies because they can see there's a demand coming as we move forward.
That's really interesting indeed. Anything to add here, Rory?
So we, as a practice, we do quite a lot of work with prefabrication, particularly what we call in the UK Category 1 volumetric modular. And there were some, in the early stages, there were some suggestions, particularly on the parts of engineers, that would result in more embodied carbon rather than less. When we did the calculations, and we've done it now for about 5 buildings, they all turn out to be about 40% less than the benchmark. Although I know, as Johanna has pointed out, that benchmarks are also at a fairly early stage of development. But we're getting consistent results, which are good and better than a lot of people expected. So it sort of demonstrates the importance of collecting data. And I think too, the fact that when you're working with prefabrication, you're working with a factory, and the factory has very good control over the data, unlike our experience in some traditional delivery, where the data is sort of held by subcontractors, and it's not always, that the data you get, the quality of the data you get back from, and sometimes quite small subcontractors, is good data. So yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting process, a revealing process for us, and gives us confidence that sort of heading towards prefabrication is heading in the right direction and a good strategic move.
Thank you very much.
Can I add something to what Rory's saying? Yeah, so similar to what's just been said, Mace is also doing quite a bit of work on prefabrication, and we call it C2P program. Yeah, and we're seeing similar gains in terms of the carbon story. So, again, we've had those challenges around, are you sure it is a reduction in carbon? But additional to that as well, what we're also seeing is our programs are coming shorter. So our site activity, so in itself, that gives us an opportunity to save carbon as well. So there's a double edge to it, there's a double bonus to it really, around having an aggressive off-site manufacturing strategy, which we offer on the majority of our projects.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both. And anything else, anyone else wants to add, or can we move on? No? All right. Let's move on to the final question for the day from the topics that we have prepared. And the final question is, what steps can organizations take to ensure the accuracy and reliability of their carbon data to meet the regulatory and environmental standards? And I believe this is something that was briefly mentioned before by you, Andrew. Do you want to take this?
Okay, yeah, it's a tricky one. Well, again, I think it comes down to education. So obviously go back into our supply chain, just having an understanding what EPDs are and how we can support our supply chain. Really. So that is the problem. In terms of regulation, I would just say we're working beyond the regulations within the UK environment at the moment. We've got some interesting things coming. So there's obviously some carbon tax on imports that's coming quite quickly. So we've got a couple of projects in Europe, and we've been involved in that process already. So yeah, it's a moving feast, but yeah, we'll have to see how it progresses over the next 18 months, I suggest.
Thank you. Anything to add here, Matt?
Yeah, I think I'd go back to supply chain again. I can't emphasize that enough, as in, Andrew's just mentioned there about, us as part of their supply chain and pushing it down the way we keep going. And that engagement and education play. For sure, we're spending it can get quite tough. There's members of our supply chain that we've actually stopped working with because they just wouldn't give up the data or let us know the material content or the material health of a particular item, certainly from a circularity or a slightly different play from carbon. But yeah, that's really important to us. But I think the other one then is the continued refinement. Though I think what we've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now, and what we realised, if I go back to that steel aluminium comparison again, what you think you know today can change very quickly. So actually taking your benchmarks and just challenging yourself again and again and again, I think is really important. I mean, it's driving some really interesting innovation plays for us in terms of, in our world, a lot of people got very excited very quickly about the plastics, right? That's the root to all evil in the world, isn't it? The plastic, right? But actually, when you break down a luminaire, there's a lot more evil things, right, knocking around inside there in the e-waste and things. So it drives you to start really thinking about driverless topologies and other ways of delivering a lighting system. So yeah, I think for us particularly, supply chain is key, but challenging that data again and again and again, it's always moving.
And if I may ask here, when it comes to regulatory and global demands, do you have an opinion on the regulations that are coming now, as Andrew mentioned?
I can't. They've got it. Yeah, they can't happen fast enough, I guess. Sorry, you're right. I skirted over that. I don't want to sound too negative, right, on the call, but someone, I think it was Andrew again, mentioned the Wild West. It is a nightmare for us, right? Because even if we go and do the right thing and we go and get it all signed off and done and go to the extra cost of learning how to deliver an EPD at the right regulatory level, there's always someone somewhere, even within the building infrastructure, the supply chain procurement team might not always be talking to the sustainability team within the builders and the M&E suppliers, who will quite quickly default to, is it an EPD? It's close enough. Off we go, sort of thing. So yeah, it needs fixing, and it needs fixing quick. But I guess for me, like I say, the one ray of light for us is actually there's one side of it is delivering an EPD. The other side of it is we learn so much from having the EPD data around us that lets us inform our own SBTI and low carbonisation journey. It still adds up for us.
Thank you very much. And what do you think, Joanna?
I mean, but the education of the staff and supply chain came first into my mind as well. I mean, without that, if people don't know what they need to report or why, then people don't do anything if they don't know why, typically. So it's just education, why and what is required, and hopefully they also come on board. I mean, also having correct tools and the job that, what you calculate is one thing. I mean, regulatory and certifications and standards and such all have a different way of calculating carbon. Like if you do an assessment for BREEAM or assessment for LEED or assessment for GLA, then all those answers are different. So within the organization, you probably should always select one way. So at least you know where you stand. Then if you need to report outside, then that's another way of reporting, and that's for their benchmarking purposes. But as long as you have a one way calculator internally, then that's also helps your own sanity, I think, because I think there is I don't know, maybe 85 different ways just in like a Western or Southern Hemisphere to calculate carbon. So it is not like a comparable easy.
Thank you, Joanna. And from what I understand, everyone agrees on the whole wide Wild West situation with regulations that are coming in different regions and in different countries. Would everyone care to add something on this? Andrew, I see you smiling.
Well, no, it's just really difficult. Ultimately, what we end up doing is when we've got a client target and we've got that narrative going, and the client is interested in the embodied story, is they have one calculation their side, client side, and we have our calculation, and we compare the two. And that's basically when we come to a narrative around what it should be and who's got the best calculation, basically. So it's a bit of an arms race ultimately. Ours is better than yours, which is not right. So if we had a regulatory structure around it a little bit more aggressively, and obviously we need the support, we keep saying this, the support from the supply chain to provide us that raw data, that EPD ideally, then everyone's a lot more comfortable with the final result. There's just sectors of the construction industry, the supply chain, which aren't really delivering. MEP being the biggest, in our opinion, the biggest challenge at the moment. And when they get up to speed and when we have a bit more granularity in their product range, I know it's a very difficult sector to deliver against, and we will get that confidence level going up. But, there's ultimately challenges in the industry around contractual positions when we get in these conversations. Insurers and those sorts of guys will start looking at this and going, crikey, is that really what you're setting your standards against? So, we have to be careful because the rest of the support industry around the built environment is going to start catching up. So we need to get on top of the game, really.
I think too that there's a point to be made about accuracy and accuracy at the right point in the process. The only point you can get fully accurate data is when you've built the building. So I'm always concerned when I see sort of early stage studies which claim 757.5 kilograms of CO2 per square meter. It should be plus or minus 10%. Until you've kind of built the building. So we're I think sometimes fooling ourselves by trying to be too accurate or claiming accuracy at too early a stage, when really we should be allowing for a level of lack of knowledge and accept that we're not able to predict everything down to the nth degree. We should all be focusing on the big decisions, the big ticket items that make a really big difference, and not worrying too much about every screw and nail, because we'll just drive ourselves mad, and we'd probably waste more carbon in calculating it than we would save by changing it.
Can I jump in on that as well?
Yes, of course.
I think it's a really good point, right? And I think it was Andrew earlier mentioned the word circularity, right? And I think that often gets lost, right, when we dive into carbon. And I know this is about carbon and it's really important, and I'm not downplaying that. But I love the way Rory talks about describing a building there over the next 40 or 50 years, right? We're going to be in these structures for a long time. They should be the regulations and the impetus should be on making sure that these buildings will evolve. So actually driving targets that don't just set it from day one, but looking at it as Rory mentioned, reviewing it. We can design luminaires now that can be upgraded. You don't have to. It's almost like we're entering into the second-hand market of luminaires, right? And the upgrade of the existing nutrients that are already in the building, and there's just got to be more impetus put on that in terms of driving that behaviour in the way we go about it. So I fully agree and support that long-term view on the building.
Thank you very much for this. It was really lovely to hear all your opinions. And this wraps up this section of our talk today. And now we have about 10 minutes left in our sessions. And I think it's time for us to present the top 3 takeaways that we have discussed before. And Matt, Andrew, and Rory, as our guests today, you will be the ones who share this with our audience. So Matt, would you like to begin?
Yeah, so number 1, accurate data is part of a bigger picture. So I sort of started to stray into this in my last answer there, didn't I? But we very quickly realized that carbon was really important to us in terms of the way we communicate to the market and the way we give the supply chain and the construction industry the data sets it needs. But you've got to recognize it is just part of a bigger picture, right? So you've got circularity, you've got material health, you've got social fairness, supply chain security. There's a lot of the things going on. So yeah, use it as one of 3 to 4 barometers of really driving circularity and sustainability would be my outcome there.
Thank you, Matt. Rory, would you like to continue?
So I think we've all described that we are in a particular point in the process about the development of LCA knowledge, tools and standards. And the picture is still changing pretty rapidly. both in terms of regulation and approaches, and the ability of the supply chain to deliver good data. So it's a challenge to us, but that doesn't mean that we stop doing what we're doing. You know, we should continue to assess buildings from an early stage through to the end stage. But I think we should be upfront and transparent about the, sometimes the fact that we don't know everything, and that there are some uncertainties around the data. And I get worried sometimes that people try and claim too good a result too early in the process. So hold back until you've built the building, and we have a full appreciation of what has actually gone into it. It's almost like sort of post-occupancy evaluation. The proof is in the final thing. So let's make claims about the buildings we've built and less about the early stage assessments we've made.
Thank you very much, Rory. Andrew, I believe we left the last takeaway for you.
Okay, yeah, so standardization and education are vital. So yeah, I think we've mentioned both of these sort of headline elements a few times. Johanna talked about standardization with reference to BREEAM and LEED having different results because the methodologies are different. So we've got that continuous challenge, and Rory sort of indicated there towards the end there that we spend more time trying to calculate the carbon, and we're wasting carbon in that process. So any standardization will help us going forward, in my opinion, whether that's through direct legislation or just a leading methodology, yeah, and again, the educational piece is we've touched on it multiple times. We're all learning quite rapidly. That it's a changing field, so it's a continuous challenge for all of us who have been working in this sort of environment for some time. And obviously that feeds back down to, as Matt indicated, back down into the supply chain. We can't build low carbon solution buildings as a contractor without the support of our supply chain. It's crucial. We need low carbon products. We need that circularity narrative to come through if we are going to get to a position where we've got a sustainable built environment going forward. So that's a raft of different opportunities, from how we manufacture to how we reuse to how we recycle to how we refurbish existing stock. There's a whole branch of opportunities, but education is central to all of that delivery.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Anything you would like to add here, Joanna?
No, other than obviously there is a lot of data, so don't wait until there is necessarily accurate data. I mean, you can still calculate carbon and make improvements to your current process with the data that there is available, because there is a lot of data and it constantly changes. That material EPDs will change because the grid is getting greener for many countries in a rapid speed. So, I mean, it's ever changing. So, I mean, there's no need to wait for years to start anything. You can start now. Then you can collect data and make improvements to your own processes.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant. And now moving on. Coming up, we have a live Q&A. But before we move on, I would love to give our audience the opportunity to learn a bit more about One-Click LCA's sustainable manufacturing software. The EPD generator makes the often lengthy and complex EPD creation process seem effortless, and especially with One-Click LCA's EPD generator for luminaires, lighting manufacturers can create simplified LCAs for sustainable lighting and generate third-party verified environmental product declarations that allow them to create low-carbon products, differentiate, and comply with global regulations. So if One-Click LCA sounds like a solution for your needs, our business team of carbon experts would love to provide a tailored demo or consultation to show you how our software might work for you in action. So if you would like to book a free demo and get advice from our carbon experts, please click yes in the poll that you can now see. Moving on, we have the moment that you have all been waiting for. We don't have a lot of time left, so we will begin a rapid-fire Q&A with our panel. And in the remaining 5 to 6 minutes, we'll try to tackle as many questions as we can. So now we can toggle yes. We can start with our questions, and here we go. First question is, what innovations, skills, or knowledge are needed or potentially useful in both the construction and manufacturing industries? And how can these industries be integrated to work together effectively? Now, who would like to begin this Q&A? I see maybe Matt smiling. Matt, I will pass this over to you.
I was smiling because of the length of the question and trying to digest it. That was the play. I think someone, it might have been Andrew, I think, touched on it earlier. I think there's got to be I really like the way your tool and your library is starting to integrate into other areas. And I think in terms of innovations, that's the key one that's going to really help us being able to, directly from our own CAD platforms, we're now integrating CAD data into our supply chain information that goes into our system that then pops out in material passports or in EPD technology. That data is already there. We already stick it into a Revit file, into a BIM model. That should just flow seamlessly through it. So I think there's still work needed there, just to make sure that integration play really helps. But I think the skill thing's difficult, right? Because we need people who understand the carbon and the mining sort of technology. The mining sort of skill sets you need to get into the data, but you also need people who understand lighting and the luminaire to actually really integrate the outcome of that data. So it's quite difficult to say, yes, we need to educate more people on how to create the data. You also need people who have got knowledge of the industry to know how to create great outcomes from that data.
Thank you very much. Anything you would like to add here, Rory?
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on that point, one of the things we find is when we try and make substitutions in, say, concrete mixes to improve the LCA, what it can do is it can drive either an improvement of the site program, or it can make it longer, depending on how you approach it. So it's not just enough, as was said, it's not just enough to have the data. You have to know how to apply it and what impact these changes will have on the supply chain or on the construction process. So it's really it's really skilling up the whole industry is what we need. It's not so much a specialist activity. There's always a danger in making something a really specialist activity. It's more about sort of general knowledge and understanding of the impact of change.
Andrew?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, Rory. So yeah, one of the pieces of work which we're continuously sort of challenged with as a business, as Mace, is carbon fluency. So if you map it against what's happened with health and safety, there isn't really, everyone's engaged with health and safety as part of their day-to-day role to make sure that works. And really we need to get to a position, we need to get to that position within our organisation that everybody understands the carbon story, so everyone understands the consequences of change, etc. And that's a big mindset change around the business. And everyone here knows how much it costs to run a project, how much it costs per square metre of their particular project. And what we're trying to do is try and get that literacy around the carbon story exactly the same, so they understand what the carbon per square metre is of that particular project. But yeah, it's an educational piece as well. What we're also, I think, with the supply chain and the industry and the manufacturing as well, is we're going to end up talking hopefully soon a lot more about cost savings or cost per carbon savings. And I think that will obviously drive change as well, because pound notes always make a difference. So once that narrative gets down into the manufacturers, they will see that hopefully will accelerate the opportunities of low carbon products.
Joanna, anything you'd like to add here?
No, nothing to add. I mean, the money point, if everyone understood carbon as like they understand money, then I think that would be a good start.
That's very true. And if we can move on to our next question now. Where do you think the critical gaps in carbon data in terms of building materials and products, and why do you think that is? So maybe Joanna, now you'd like to.
I mean, there's gaps in a lot of carbon data. I'd say, I mean, MEP is obviously mentioned a few few times, and which is not like, it's quite understandable because it's not one material, it's many. And it's also a bit secretive how you put them together. No one really wants to know. There's a box, but no one knows what's inside a HVAC unit. Like, well, we know it's something, but because it runs. But there is also other, I mean, steel doesn't have a lot of EPDs. Quite a lot of them are averaged. They don't have a specific ones. Concrete again has, I think our platform there's like, I don't know, 28,000 or something, which is a lot compared to steel has probably 20. And MEP has probably 2,000 or so. So there is other gaps, and also system levels as well. So obviously there is materials, but you have to somehow put them together, which would have all the, like the wall, if it's a wall piece, like a tiles and the ties and everything, that kind of thing also could be improved in a big scale.
Thank you, Joanna. Matt, luminaires were mentioned. MEP.
Yeah, I mean, Johanna's spot on. When you look within our luminaire, the driver is the bit, right? The electronics is a little bit of a black box, so to speak, in terms of what's in there. I guess the conversation, we've had this conversation before, though, haven't we, Johanna? For us, I'm more, we've been on this journey now 4 or 5 years, right? And we've become very literate at understanding our carbon and where it's at. Where we're at now is, all the nutrients, all the materials I need to build a luminaire are already in the built environment or out there, right? We're already working on projects where we're bringing luminaires back, refurbing them and putting them back into new buildings or refurbs. And what I'm after next is the ability for a tool like OneClick to be able to help me describe what that journey has been and how that reduction in carbon flows through in a reused or a reimagined luminaire sort of thing. So it's not so much about gaps in the data. It's now allowing me to use the data I've got to sort of project it in a more circular, reusable and recyclable way. I mean, we've launched luminaires that have got a life of 40, 50 years that will be upgraded with the building. How do I demonstrate that to someone like Andrew or Greg on the call in terms of when they're building and designing that space? How do we get that value into their build?
Thank you very much, Andrew. Rory, anything you would like to add here?
Well, I think the point Joanna made about combined information, so us looking at a wall and understanding everything that's gone into the wall, in a fairly standardized way, because these days, we tend to build things, certainly in our business, we tend to build things in a fairly standardized approach. So being able to take data from one project and move it quickly onto the next project means we can speed up the whole assessment process. And get better at understanding how we can make improvements. We're identifying where the big items are. We've had a brick manufacturer approach us recently who is firing their bricks using renewable materials, so using biomass, but they don't have an EPD. Combining the sort of data about build-ups and then being able to integrate information quickly from interesting manufacturers is where we're headed.
Thank you, Rory. Anything you would like to add quickly, Andrew, since we're running a little bit out of time?
No, I think there's quite a few different industry initiatives. The TM65 methodology has got there's some challenges around there, but they're going to add an auditing process to it. That all helps. It just brings that carbon requirements into different sectors, and so it pushes along. So yeah, we're slowly getting there, and it's all moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much. And now, thank you all for making this very heated and very insightful discussion. And we'd finally like to mention OneClick LCA Academy. As we mentioned, education and the need for education in the sector before. It is a free training program, part of our commitment to train 1 million low-carbon experts by 2030. And if you scan this QR code here, you can enroll for our next course, which is this June, or visit academy.oneclicklca.com. And I would like to very briefly talk to you about OneClick LCA's Low Carbon Manufacturing Awards. It's a contest that celebrates sustainable practices in low carbon solutions in manufacturing, and it's open to manufacturers of all sizes across all industries. And it's a great opportunity to gain global visibility, benchmark your product, and win more business. So if you would like to know more about these awards, please scan the QR code and visit the dedicated page. And don't forget to stay tuned for our next keynote talk, Sustainability is Smart Business for Manufacturers, featuring VP Sustainability at Schneider Electric, Director in Sustainable Business Development at Saint-Gobain, and OneClick LCA SEO and founder, Pan Pasanen. Please don't miss it. Closing, I would like to thank you all very much for joining in today, and let you know that we love hearing from you. So if you would like to contact us and contact our experts, please email us at sales@oneclicklca.com or go to our oneclicklca.com webpage. Thank you all for joining in today. It was a pleasure to discuss this very important topic with you all, and I think we all learned a lot today. And have a lovely day, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.